This is a true story. It happened in America. Bob was 29 years old. Bob was healthy. Bob paid for health insurance every single month. Bob made one mistake. One. He went to the hospital. What happened to him there had nothing to do with being sick. It was a kind of horror they don't make movies about. The horror of the bill. It started innocently enough. On an ordinary Tuesday, Bob sneezed. He sneezed so hard he felt a tiny twinge in his back. No big deal. Nothing, really. In any normal country, you take a pill, you go to sleep, and by morning, you've forgotten it ever happened. But Bob didn't live in a normal country. Bob lived in a country where a single sneeze can cost as much as a used car. Bob didn't know that yet. Bob only thought one thing, the same thought every victim in this story thinks. I'll just go get it checked, just to be safe. Bob got in his car and drove to the nearest emergency room. The doors slid open in front of him, like a giant mouth. The first bad sign came immediately, before they asked him his name. They asked him if he had insurance. Bob smiled. "Yes, I do," he said, proudly. The receptionist smiled too, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who already knows how this story ends. Bob sat down in the waiting room. Other people sat around him. They all had the same empty stare. Not sick, just aware. After 2 hours, a nurse put her hand on Bob's shoulder and said, "We're ready for you now." That touch lasted 3 seconds. Remember those 3 seconds. They will come back to us later. The doctor walked into the room. He looked at Bob, really looked, for a full 90 seconds. Then he said 3 magic words. It's a pulled muscle. He gave Bob one ibuprofen in a tiny plastic cup and told him to get some rest. That was it. No surgery, no x-ray, no drama. 1 pill, 1 cup, 1 look. Bob stood up, said thank you, and walked out into the sunshine. He felt great. Bob thought this was the end of the story. Bob was wrong. The story hadn't even started yet. Days passed, weeks passed. Bob went back to his normal life. He drank his morning coffee. He scrolled his phone at 3 in the morning. He lived. He forgot about the sneeze. He forgot about the hospital. He was happy. And then, one rainy afternoon, Bob opened his mailbox. And there, waiting for him, was it? A white envelope. Thin, innocent, silent, with the words that freeze the blood of every American. This is not a bill. This is a summary of benefits. Bob was still smiling as he tore it open. That was the last time Bob ever smiled. Bob looked at the number at the bottom of the page. Then he sat down. Then he read it again. $12,300 for a sneeze. With trembling little hands, Bob started reading the charges, one by one. And this is where the real horror begins. Emergency room visit, $4,000. 1 ibuprofen pill, $40. The same pill you can buy at the store for pennies. But this was hospital ibuprofen, premium. The plastic cup for that pill, $18. A cup, $18. A pair of latex gloves the nurse wore for 3 seconds, $75. Facility fee, $800. Bob didn't even lie down on their bed. He simply existed inside the building. And that was enough. Remember the nurse's touch? Those 3 seconds on his shoulder? $1,200, $400 per second of human compassion. And the doctor's look? Those 90 seconds of staring? $1,500. In this country, even eye contact has a price. And finally, at the very bottom, administrative fee for processing the administrative fee, $90. Bob stared at that piece of paper and felt something he had never felt before. Not pain, fear. But Bob didn't give up. Bob had insurance, after all. That's what he paid for every month. Right? Bob took a deep breath and called his insurance company. First, he heard the music. That music. A calm, looping little melody that, after 40 minutes, starts to sound like the whisper of a demon. After 55 minutes, a human being answered. Hopeful, Bob explained the whole situation. The person on the other end said, "I have good news. The hospital was in our network." Bob exhaled. "But the doctor who treated you was not." "Yes. The hospital was in network. The doctor who worked in that hospital, in that building, in that exact room, was out of network. He worked in a place his own employer didn't even know about. And then came the final sentence, 'Your claim has been denied.'" Bob asked, "Why?" The answer, "Breathing is not covered under your plan during an emergency." Bob filed an appeal. To file it, he had to send a document by fax in the year 2026. Bob didn't even know what a fax was. Bob had to buy a fax machine just to pay for the fact that he sneezed. More weeks passed. The bill didn't go away. The bill grew. They added interest. They added a processing fee. They added a fee for reminding him about the fee. Then the phone calls started from a collections agency. They called in the morning. They called at night. They called on holidays. And Bob's credit score, that magic number that controls your entire life in America, started to drop, faster than his faith in humanity. Bob considered all his options. Start a GoFundMe. Move to Canada. Fake his own death and start a new life as a goat in the mountains. But in the end, Bob did what every American does in this situation. He took a deep breath and simply stopped answering the phone. Bob didn't pay. Bob didn't die. Bob just learned one single lesson. Never, ever, ever again. Sneeze. But this is only the beginning, because the American system has many more surprises in store. And next week, Bob is going to the dentist. This was Hospital Bill Horror, Season 1. Subscribe if you survived.